Thanksgiving that year smelled like rosemary and hot bread. I was sitting at the far end of my parents' long dining table, the one they only used for holidays, when my father set his fork down and said calmly, "We're cutting you off financially." No raised voice, no anger, just a statement, delivered the same way he announced business decisions. I didn't respond right away. I kept my hands folded in my lap and let the room stay quiet. Somewhere near the kitchen, a timer chimed and shut itself off. Plates shifted. Someone cleared their throat. I remember thinking about a call I had scheduled for the following Monday morning, a call I hadn't told anyone about yet. The table was full. Aunts and uncles, cousins, my older brother and his wife, kids squeezed together on one side with coloring books and rolls they weren't eating. Wine glasses caught the warm light from the chandelier. Everything looked exactly the way it always did. To them, I was still the same person I'd been for years. Lena, 31, the family artist, the one who lived in a small apartment in Queens and did photography on the side. My aunt across from me smiled politely and went back to her food. My brother leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, already nodding like this made sense to him. My father continued, explaining that it was time for me to grow up, that the monthly help had gone on long enough. Rent, car insurance, a few quiet transfers I'd never asked them to announce in front of everyone. My mother didn't look at me. She stared at her plate, pushing food around like she was trying to make it disappear. I stayed still. I'd learned years ago that silence made people reveal more than arguments ever could. My brother added something about responsibility, about how he had a mortgage, 2 kids, a real career. He didn't sound angry. He sounded satisfied. The room felt warm, almost too warm, and the leather chair beneath me stuck slightly to the back of my legs when I shifted. I nodded once, just enough to acknowledge I'd heard them. "I understand," I said. That seemed to relax my father. His shoulders dropped a fraction, like he'd been bracing for a reaction that never came. He softened his tone and said this wasn't punishment, it was guidance. Tough love. I stood, thanked everyone for dinner, and said I needed some air. No one stopped me. Outside, the night was cold and clean. Their neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes from distance and gates and long driveways. I walked to my car, a plain gray sedan I'd bought used on purpose, and sat for a moment before starting it. My phone buzzed while the engine warmed. A message from my brother. "Don't take it personally. Dad's just trying to motivate you." I set the phone face down. The drive back to Queens took less than an hour. Traffic thinned as I crossed the bridge, city lights spreading out in familiar patterns. When I pulled into my building's small lot, only 2 spaces were empty. Same as always. Inside my apartment, I hung my coat carefully, poured a glass of water, and turned on my desk lamp. The room was quiet except for the hum of the radiator. I opened my laptop. A dashboard loaded on the screen. Columns, accounts, numbers updating in real time. I stared at it for a long moment, then checked the time on my phone. Monday was closer than they thought. I closed the laptop, sat back in my chair, and waited. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. The apartment was quiet in that early way I liked. Radiator ticking, a bus hissing somewhere outside. I made coffee slowly and stood by the window while it brewed, watching a delivery truck double park and a woman walk her dog down the block like she did every day at the same time. Nothing about my routine had changed. That was the part my family never understood. They thought struggle was loud, that success announced itself. They didn't notice patterns, systems, or consistency. They noticed appearances. Growing up, I'd learned early where I fit in their hierarchy. My brother was the responsible one, the future leader, the one who followed the expected path. I was the creative one, encouraged when I was young, tolerated when I got older, quietly worried about once I passed 30. No one ever asked how I paid my bills. They assumed they already knew. At family gatherings, conversations floated around me. Real estate prices, deal flow, who knew which banker, Who got into which school? I listened more than I spoke. When I did speak, it was usually about my camera, a recent shoot, a gallery opening I didn't expect them to attend. That suited me fine. After college, I'd kept my life deliberately narrow in their view. Same car, same building, same explanation. Photography gigs, freelance work, enough to sound plausible without inviting questions. What they didn't see were the mornings I spent reviewing reports before sunrise. The calls taken in stairwells, the documents signed digitally while sitting on the floor with my laptop balanced against the couch. I'd learned early that visibility came with expectations, and expectations came with pressure I didn't want. That Monday call I'd thought about at Thanksgiving wasn't unusual. It was scheduled because it always was. Same time, same agenda. Quarterly adjustments, account confirmations, risk reviews. I showered, dressed simply, and sat at my desk as the call connected. Names filled the screen. Familiar voices checked in. Numbers were read aloud. Decisions were made quickly, without drama. When it was my turn to speak, I gave short answers, approved changes, asked for confirmations, set timelines. No one questioned my authority. By mid-morning, my phone started lighting up. Missed calls, text previews stacking without me opening them. I didn't respond right away. I followed the order I'd set for myself years earlier. Step 1, verify. Step 2, wait. Step 3, act only when necessary. Around noon, I finally glanced at the messages. My mother, asking if I was okay. My brother, saying something was wrong with one of his cards. A cousin asking if I was having bank trouble too. I placed the phone face down again. Outside, the city moved like it always did. People rushing, construction noise, a siren fading into the distance. By late afternoon, I heard the familiar buzz again. This time, I answered. My mother sounded flustered but controlled, the way she always did when she didn't want to alarm anyone. She said there had been a mix-up. A card declined at lunch. The bank couldn't explain it. I listened, asked a neutral question or two, suggested she call customer service again. 20 minutes later, my brother called. His voice was tighter, faster. He said accounts were inaccessible, that a deal was on hold, that Dad was handling something at the dealerships. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling while he talked. I didn't explain. I didn't reassure. I didn't deny anything either. By evening, the family group chat was active again for the first time in months. Messages overlapping. Confusion layered with frustration. Screenshots of error messages. Question marks. Half-formed theories. I typed a single sentence and sent it. Probably system maintenance. Banks do this sometimes. Then I put the phone down and didn't touch it again. Dinner that night was quiet. I ate standing up, cleaned the counter, and rinsed my glass before setting it upside down on the towel. Small motions. Familiar order. Later, I opened my laptop again. Everything was exactly where it should be. I closed the screen and turned off the lamp. Tomorrow, they would want answers. And for the first time, I was ready to give them some. Just not all at once. Then I waited. Tuesday morning, my father called an emergency family meeting. That alone told me how serious it had become. He didn't gather people unless he felt control slipping. The message was brief. Everyone needed to be at the house by noon. No details, no explanations. I arrived on time. The driveway was fuller than usual. Cars parked slightly crooked, like no one had taken the extra second to straighten out. Inside, the house felt different. Quieter. The heat was lower than normal. The air carried the faint smell of coffee that had gone cold. My brother was pacing near the window, phone pressed to his ear, then lowered when he saw me. My mother sat on the sofa with her hands folded, staring at a spot on the rug. An uncle I hadn't seen in months stood near the fireplace, jacket still on. My father looked older than he had on Sunday. "Thank God you're here," he said, as if I'd just flown in from somewhere far away. "What's going on?" I asked, calmly, taking a seat. They talked over each other at first. Accounts frozen, credit lines suspended, payments failing, banks insisting everything was done by authorized parties, No signs of theft. No one willing to reverse anything quickly. My brother finally stopped pacing. "This isn't random," he said. "It's too precise." My father nodded. "It's like someone understands how everything connects." That was the moment the room shifted. They weren't angry anymore. They were afraid. I listened without interrupting. I didn't offer theories. I didn't rush to comfort anyone. Silence has weight when you let it. Eventually, my uncle turned to me. "Lena, I know this is awkward, especially after Sunday, but do you know anyone? Financial people, advisors, anyone who could explain this?" All eyes moved to me. The irony didn't escape me. 2 days earlier, I was the dependent. Now I was the question mark. "I might," I said. "Let me step outside and make a call." On the back patio, the stone was cold through the soles of my shoes. I didn't call anyone. I checked notifications, skimmed an update, confirmed a few timestamps. 10 minutes later, I went back inside. I told them what I knew without revealing anything new. That situations like this usually involved someone with deep access, someone patient, someone who understood systems rather than chasing shortcuts. My father's jaw tightened. "You're saying this was intentional?" "Yes." "By who?" I didn't answer right away. I walked to the center of the room instead, pulled my phone from my pocket, opened an app. I held the screen up, steady, so everyone could see it clearly. Numbers filled the display. Clean, unapologetic. No one spoke. My brother laughed once, sharp and uncertain. That's not real." "It is," I said. I swiped. Another screen. Another account. Then a portfolio summary. Then property holdings. The room went very still. My mother stood up slowly, like she needed the movement to breathe. "Lena," she said, "what are you showing us?" "The reason nothing was stolen," I replied, "and why nothing belongs to you the way you think it does." My father stared at the phone as if it might contradict itself. "You didn't lose money," I said. "You lost access." I let that sit. Then I added evenly, "Because I stopped backing it." No one interrupted me. No one could. I took a seat again, folding my hands the same way I had on Sunday. The same calm posture, the same control. This time, the silence belonged to me. And I waited for the questions to start. The questions didn't come all at once. They came slowly, unevenly, as each person tried to place what they'd just seen into something familiar. My father was the first to speak. His voice was low, careful. "You're saying you caused this." "I allowed it to stop," I replied. "There's a difference." My brother sat down hard in the chair across from me. "How long?" 3 years. My mother pressed her hand to her mouth. 3 years of what? "Of support," I said. "Quiet, structured, conditional." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't soften it either. Facts don't need volume. I stood and walked to the sideboard where my father kept old paperwork. I knew exactly what was there. I pulled a thin folder from the back and laid it on the table. "This house," I said, opening it. "The mortgage was in default. I bought the note through a holding company. You never missed a payment because I never let you." My father didn't touch the folder. He just stared at it. "My brother's firm," I continued, sliding another document forward. "Those contracts that kept revenue steady, I underwrote them. The guarantees were mine." My brother picked that one up. His hands shook slightly. "My mother's charity accounts," I said, turning to her. "The large donations that arrived right before each gala? Anonymous, routed, replenished. All me." She sat back down without speaking. I didn't list everything. I didn't need to. Once a pattern becomes visible, details only confirm it. "This week," I said, "I followed the same process I always do. Step 1, remove my guarantees. Step 2, lock new credit exposure. Step 3, observe. Observe what? My uncle asked. How you'd respond, I said. Under pressure, without a safety net you didn't know existed. My father finally looked up. His expression wasn't angry anymore. It was confused. Smaller. Why didn't you tell us? I considered that for a moment. At first, I said, because I didn't want advice. Then because I didn't want interference. And eventually, because I wanted clarity. Clarity about what? My mother asked quietly. About who I was to you when you thought I had nothing. No one argued. No one defended themselves. The room felt like it had lost gravity. I sat back down. I'm not here to punish anyone, I said. I'm here to establish order. My brother swallowed. So what happens now? That depends, I replied, on which structure you want. I raised one finger. Option 1. Everything goes back the way it was. Accounts restored. Access reinstated. You continue living inside systems you don't fully understand. A second finger. Option 2. We rebuild. Transparently. Slowly. With rules. My father exhaled through his nose. Rules. Yes, I said. Because money without structure creates dependence, and dependence creates resentment. Silence again. Heavier this time. Finally, my father nodded once. Show us, he said. I didn't smile. I opened my calendar instead. Tomorrow, I said, 9 a.m., my office. We start by reviewing what actually exists, not appearances, not assumptions. My brother frowned. You have an office? I have several, I replied. You'll see one. I stood and gathered my coat. As I reached the door, I added, almost casually, the heat should be back on now. Utilities, too. I don't shut those off. That's not leverage. That's cruelty. No one followed me. Outside, the air felt lighter. The first shift had already happened, and they hadn't even seen the full structure yet. My office was quiet when they arrived the next morning. Glass walls, neutral colors, nothing flashy. The kind of place that didn't try to impress because it didn't need to. I was already seated when the elevator doors opened, reviewing a report I'd read twice before. They walked in together, unsure where to stand. My father straightened his jacket. My brother looked around, counting screens. My mother stayed close to him, hands folded like she didn't know what to do with them. No one spoke until I gestured to the table. Sit, I said. They did. I didn't start with explanations. I started with documents. I slid a folder across the table, then another, then a tablet with a shared dashboard already open. Dates, timelines, cash flow summaries, ownership structures. This is not a reveal, I said evenly. It's a review. My brother leaned forward first. He recognized patterns before meanings. He always had. These entities, he said slowly. They're connected. Yes, and they back... He stopped, looked up at me. They back everything. They did, I corrected. Past tense. My father cleared his throat. You're telling us our entire operation was... floating. On my balance sheet, I said, with limits and exit clauses. My mother finally spoke. You could have walked away. I could have, I agreed. But you didn't. No. That landed differently. I tapped the table once, gently. This isn't about gratitude, and it's not about guilt. It's about alignment. Alignment with what? My father asked. With reality, I said. The one that exists whether you acknowledge it or not. I opened another file. Here's the truth. Your businesses weren't failing because you lacked effort. They were failing because they were built on outdated assumptions. Easy credit, familiar contacts, risk without insulation. I paused. Let them absorb it. You thought you were protecting me by cutting me off, I continued. What you were really doing was revealing how you think about value. My brother looked down at his hands. My father didn't look away. This conversation, I said, is the confrontation, not because voices are raised, but because facts are. I pushed one last document forward, a simple agreement, clear language. This is the boundary, I said. If we move forward, it's as partners. Transparent reporting, shared risk, no hidden support, no silent rescues. And if we don't? My father asked. Then Monday remains permanent. Silence stretched across the table. Long enough to be uncomfortable. Long enough to matter. Finally, my father nodded. Once. Slowly. We didn't see you, he said. That's on us. I closed the folder. Good, I said, because acknowledgement is the only starting point that works. I stood, signaling the meeting's end. We'll reconvene after you've reviewed everything. Take the day. Ask real questions, not defensive ones. They stood too, quieter than when they'd arrived. As they left, I sat back down and reopened the report on my screen. There was nothing more to say today. The structure was in place. Now I needed to see if they could meet it. They came back 2 days later. Not all together this time. My brother arrived first, early, carrying a notebook he hadn't bothered to hide. My mother followed, quieter than usual, eyes tired but clear. My father was last. He closed the door behind him carefully, like someone entering a space he finally understood wasn't his. We didn't sit right away. I reviewed everything, my father said. No qualifiers, no defensiveness. 3 times. I nodded. Then you know what's real. Yes, he said. And what isn't? That mattered more than an apology. We sat. This time, I didn't slide documents across the table. I pulled up a single timeline on the screen. Dates on the left, decisions on the right. Here's where things change, I said. Not emotionally, structurally. I pointed to the first marker. All accounts reopen under their actual owners. No guarantees, no backstops you don't see. My brother nodded. Understood. Second, I continued, every business operates with independent audits, quarterly, no exceptions. My father exhaled. That would have exposed the problem sooner. Yes, I said, that's the point. My mother asked the question she'd been holding since Thanksgiving. And us? You, I said, looking at her. Stop being insulated from consequences. That includes me. She nodded slowly. I let the silence do its work. Then I said, here's what I will do. I outlined it plainly. Advisory roles, limited capital injections tied to performance, clear exit rules. Nothing hidden, nothing emotional. This isn't rescue, I said. It's collaboration. If it stops making sense, it stops. My brother leaned back, absorbing it. You've been doing this alone for years. Yes. And now? Now, I said, I stop carrying weight that isn't mine. My father looked at me for a long moment. You didn't embarrass us. No, I said. I corrected the record. That was the closest we came to closure in words. The actual resolution happened quietly. Accounts reopened under new terms, deals renegotiated or dissolved. 1 dealership sold, 2 restructured. My brother stepped back from a role he'd outgrown and into one that fit better. My mother resigned from a board she didn't understand and joined one she did. No announcements, no speeches. On Friday evening, I went home to Queens. I made tea, washed the mug, wiped the counter, opened a window even though it was cold. My phone buzzed once, a message from my father. Thank you for not letting us pretend anymore. I set the phone face down. Outside, the streetlights came on one by one. For the first time in a long while, everything felt aligned. Not perfect, but honest. And that was enough. I turned off the light and let the room go quiet. The weeks that followed were calm. Not easy, not dramatic either. Just steady. I kept my routine. Early mornings, coffee by the window, reports before emails. Evenings quiet enough to hear the building settle. My apartment still looked the same. Sparse, intentional. Nothing new to prove. My family adjusted slowly. My father started asking questions instead of giving instructions. Real ones. About margins. About timing. About when to stop pushing and start listening. My brother showed up with spreadsheets instead of opinions. He learned faster than he expected. My mother stopped hosting and started observing. She paid attention in rooms she used to glide through. No one asked me for money anymore. They asked for clarity. One afternoon, while sorting paperwork at my desk, I got a call from a former colleague, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. He said he'd heard I was good at untangling complicated situations. He paused before adding that his sister was being quietly pushed out of a family business she'd built more than anyone realized. I told him to have her document everything: dates, access, patterns. After I hung up, I sat for a moment longer than usual. It wasn't about saving people. It never was. It was about order, about seeing clearly when others refused to, about knowing when silence was useful and when structure mattered more than emotion. That night, I cleaned my kitchen. Slowly, methodically. I lined up the mugs, threw out old receipts, wiped the counter until it was bare. Then I sat down, opened my notebook, and wrote a single name at the top of a fresh page, just in case. If you stayed with me through this story, thank you. If it felt familiar, you're not alone. Take a moment to like and subscribe if these kinds of calm, real stories resonate with you. And if you're comfortable, leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from and what time it is right now. I read more of them than you think. 2 more stories will appear next, ones a lot of people have been asking about. Until then, take care of your space. Protect your clarity.